My name is Christy McNamara. I'm the director in the Office of Student Involvement and Leadership Development, and I'm also the director of our orientation programs here at the university. So I'd like to say thanks for coming and taking some time on this very stormy evening. Hopefully nobody loses power while we're doing this. We appreciate you taking the time to come and ask some questions of our expert panelists, I like to call them, to get your students ready for the start of the fall semester. So just a few things to go over about how we run our chats through Zoom for our parent orientation. So this call is being recorded because we actually like to record this so that we are able to put it on to our website for other family members to take a look at if they were not able to make it tonight. So just do that little disclaimer. If all of you could do me a favor, and we will be using the chat feature this evening at the bottom of your screen. If you could just add your name into the chat, just so we can take attendance. I know it sounds funny, but just so we know how many people are
here. You got us in.
And if you could do that, just add your name to the chat. That would be great. We'll also follow up with you on an evaluation for the chats that you did attend through your email. You may have noticed that all of you are going to be muted. It's just easier. We have a lot of folks today on our call, and it is actually just easier to mute everybody and to use the chat feature for any questions that you do have throughout this whole chat. So please feel free to enter anything at the bottom of your screen, any questions that you do have, okay? So now I'd like to go on to some introductions, very exciting. So first, I would love to have Hank. Henry, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. I am Henry Terrio. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, which is a job that just means I do a bunch of different things all over the place. You know, everything from helping out when there are student issues that we coordinate with other divisions, like my friends in Student Affairs who are on this panel. All the way through to helping students set up and faculty set up research grants and things like that. So it's really a whole bunch of things, and I'm excited to be here to meet all of you.
Thanks, Hank. Okay, next we have Dawn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Eads. I'm the Associate Dean of Student Engagement, and I oversee more of the non-academic support services. Things like residence life and Office of Student Leadership and counseling services and those areas that help students outside of the classroom be successful inside of the classroom. So all those student support services. It's really great to be here. I'm glad we get to do this with you during this time. I think it's really important. And I just ask that you have some patience through this as we're learning this as well, going into this unprecedented time. And but we're ready, and we're as excited as we can be for this fall semester. So please know that we are very excited for your students to join us. So thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. And our question moderator for the evening, Josh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Katz. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Community Standards, and I also do a lot of work with the orientation program, so welcome.
He's a great question moderator. Okay, so as I mentioned, obviously we will be going through and first we're going to tackle the questions that some of you had asked at the registration when you registered for this Zoom call. There were 6 or 7 questions in that, and then we'll move to the chat questions. I see some of you are already hopefully populating the chat with some questions, so please feel free as things come up to do that as well. Josh may also add some different resources for you out the chat in the chat, so you can take a look at those too while we're. If you do think that you have a question that may be more on the personal side, as you saw, and I'm going to go back to those slides, we do have email addresses. Email the specific questions to if it's something more of a personal nature that you might not feel comfortable or might be too specific to be addressed here. So I'll bring those up along the way too. I'm going to bounce back and forth so you'll be able to see that, okay? And then at the end, we'll just give you a little bit of an information on our Safe Return to Campus chat that will be next week. We can talk about that and just kind of finish up, okay? So I'm gonna turn it over to Josh to focus on our first questions.
All right, thanks, Chrissy. So Hank, the first couple questions are for you. And again, these are pre-submitted by the parents in the Zoom. Hank, are labs going to be taught in person?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. We are very sensitive, obviously, to the safety issues around being on campus. So two things have happened, among others, but two main things. The first thing is we're doing everything with social distancing. So when labs are in person, and they do need to be in many cases, because the work is as hands-on as it gets, everything will be set up with proper social distancing, safety measures, all the things that are not just required of us, but that we want to do to keep everyone safe. The second thing is some of the instructors for lab courses have figured out ways to use some simulation and distance learning with their lab courses. And so that's another way that will sort of minimize risk as much as we can. So for instance, there'll be cases in which a professor might actually do the physical lab on video and then have students answer questions about it and do a lab report as if they had sort of done it themselves. Again, we're mixing all these things, with an eye toward making sure that, safety is the most important thing, making sure everybody's safe, and then doing as much as we can beyond that to just give everyone a great experience and give them the kind of, hands-on work that they're going to need as they go forward in their programs.
Hank, so this next question, kind of you started to allude to it, the second half of it, but this question is, why are some classes offered online and some must be attended in person? And the second half, which you kind of touched upon, is what are some of the safety measures in the classes that's being taken by the university?
Right. Excellent questions. And as a parent, I'm right with everyone who's worrying about those things. I think we all are, and we really need concrete answers. So what we have done over the past almost 6 months now, actually starting in, I guess about 4.5 months, starting in March, when we finalize our fall schedule and have students who are on campus already or already enrolled do what's called pre-registration. Incoming first-year students do that over the summer. They've been doing it. I'm sure all your students have done this already with Academic Success Center. And we began early looking at different models to do two things. One is to make sure that, recognizing that COVID was going to be probably with us through the fall, that we would be able to run classes in a way that made sure safety, we were doing all the things we need to do to be safe. That included moving some courses online and also very frequently using what are called blended courses, where we would have some in-person contact time and some distance learning contact time. And actually, as I was a professor for a number of years, and I actually used to use this technique quite a bit, because there are ways that you get sort of a good advantage on both ends of that. There are things that distance learning does really well, particularly ongoing discussions, but there's also a real value to in-person connection in a classroom, talking to people and so forth. So we're trying to preserve these different components in classes. Originally, we were reading all of the data, all of the surveys of students, the expert pundit, in education, opinion pieces, studies, and everything. And they were saying students wanted as much in person as possible. As we started moving forward at Worcester State with registration, with talking to students, with doing enrollment and so forth, we started to realize that that was probably not the case, that students did have some anxiety in some cases and did have a comfort level in many cases with online courses. So we've been trying to shift to sort of meet the demand where it is. And one of the things that we're noticing is that for some students, particularly those with significant commutes to campus who are commuter students. They're actually pushing for online options because it's actually more convenient for them, especially, you know, given the risk of COVID. So we're trying to balance so that we make sure students have the options, and ultimately students will be able to build a schedule that not only works with them academically, but also that they feel really comfortable with. Some students really want to be in person as learners, and we want that as an option for them. Some students are having some anxiety over COVID-19, and believe me, I get it. It is scary. It keeps, you know, we keep getting surprised. And for them, and maybe for their families, online, or at least mostly online options are much more comfortable and appealing. And so we're just trying to make sure that those options are there. And we're continuing to work with students, and we'll continue to work with them if they want to adjust their schedules. If any of your students want to adjust their schedules for whatever reason, you know, let us know. You can email me or go straight to the Academic Success Center, and we'll do everything we can to accommodate them. I'm sorry, Josh, there was another question there and I got carried away.
But it talked about the safety measures being taken.
Oh, safety measures, yeah. So I have to say, hasn't been the easiest thing, but what we've done for distance learning, oddly enough, there are some safety measures. You know, we want to make sure students are comfortable. You know, we have all the anti-bullying, harassment, all that kind of stuff in place. We really don't have problems with that on campus. We've got a pretty good campus in that way, but all those kinds of safety things are in. The more important COVID-19 safety side for in-person classes is we're doing social distancing. So every classroom and actually every other space on campus that could be used as a classroom has been analyzed by our experts in facilities management. And they have determined, based on the state guidelines from Massachusetts, what the appropriate number of students in that classroom, maximum number is, how the desks should be arranged, where people should be, and so forth. So every classroom that a student goes into will be set up for safe social distancing. That has meant a little bit of a scramble because there are some, our classes tend to be small, which is wonderful. But there, you know, it has been a little bit of a challenge because we do have those 30-person classes that require, you know, what used to be 100-room classrooms or 100-room spaces, which we don't have a lot of, just to accommodate everyone. But so far, things are working really well. I just checked with the registrar yesterday. Things are working well. We're finding spaces. We're working things out. And so we'll make sure of that. The other, you know, among other things, the hand washing, all that is masks. So students will be receiving masks at the beginning of the fall. And asked to, you know, wear a mask at any point on campus. This is to protect them, because we are learning that masks do protect you as well when you're wearing a mask. For a while, people didn't think that was the case, but it turns out it seems to be. But also to protect other people. There's a kind of a code of conduct we've developed around this, where students are expected to have respect for other people on campus. Faculty members, staff, everybody is observing exactly the same rules. And, you know, so far, I've been on campus, others have been on campus, you know, enough to see that things seem to be working pretty well. There's no problems, actually no issues I've heard of. If there are issues, we have ways of dealing with that. But again, just knowing Worcester State students the way I do, I just don't see people being, you know, being really disrespectful to others. I don't see any big problems with mask wearing. We also have it set up so if a student forgets a mask, we'll have disposable masks all over campus. So there's no, you know, it's not like they're going to have to miss class or anything like that. You know, they'll be able to do that. And the big question in addition to that is testing. And contact monitoring, and it's a little bit beyond my expertise, but I do know we're working on a testing protocol. We've been working on it quite a bit. The testing availability and how do I want to say, level of tests, you know, keep improving, and so we're trying to stay with that and make sure that we're testing, you know, at a reasonable pace. And also doing contact tracing. We've looked at a lot of different software or apps and software and so forth to do that. So we'll have that all in place. I think with COVID-19, because things change so much, we try to look at all the options, and then honestly, we'll make the decision once we really are at the point where we have to, but we try to keep the options open until we really have to do that. But you'll definitely be getting more communication on that.
I can even jump in and talk a little bit more about the testing app that
great.
we're using, if that's helpful. So we are going to be using the Broad. It's pronounced Broad, but it's spelled Broad. So just so that's not confusing. It's from the Broad Institute. And these are healthcare professionals, experts, and engineers who actually came together and created this app called Co-Verified. And they created it just in response to COVID-19 for universities. So you really can't get any better than that. Other universities are using that, and we are as well. And you know your students, you know how good they are with technology. They're going to be diving into this app, and they're going to know more than we will, I'm sure, immediately. But it's what we'll use when they need to go sign up to go get testing done. Residential students right now will be tested weekly. They will also be tested before they can move in on August 31st or September 1st, whatever date they're coming. And so it's really a comprehensive, again, I've only seen a demonstration of it once so far. We're still meeting with the company and still working through this, but we're able on the back end to see positive results, who they're living with. We consider kind of their living space households. So we can really get on top of this pretty quickly, so we can quarantine and make sure that the virus doesn't spread. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm sure thank you, Josh, for putting that in there. If you want to look at it more, not sure how much information is out there because they're selling the product, but I don't know if you can see a demo. I'm not sure how that works, but certainly when your student gets this, I'm sure they're going to show you and walk you through it.
Thank you both.
Dawn, thank you for that update. Now I know more than I did coming in as well, which is great. Things keep moving. It's good to know.
We're in this
learning as we go. We're learning
Dawn,
as we
the
go.
next question is for you. Will the gym, golf simulator, library, and cafeteria be accessible to students?
Yes, but let me break those down because they're all very different areas. So let me tackle the gym and the golf simulator. So the gym is accessible actually to students only. So throughout the years, we've always had staff and faculty. Right now, we're just limiting it to students. Again, there is going to be all this safe distancing, all the precautions that need to be practiced. Students will need to wear a mask while they're exercising. I get that is not ideal, but we need to do it. We will provide everything they need. There's going to be disinfectant and wipes for them to wipe down the equipment before they use it and after they use it, but staff will also be going through to disinfect. They will be making sure that they're enforcing the social distancing. Not everything will be available just because we're not able to do that. But the golf simulator, yes, that will be available again. I believe, and please don't quote me, I'm still learning, I believe it's only 2 people at a time. We are going to ask if students have their own golf equipment to bring it in and use their own. So anytime they can use their own stuff, we're going to ask for that. And they'll space it out so that they can, again, disinfect and do all those things. So there'll be limitations to things in regards to that, but also we want to make it so students can also use it. So they're just going to have to follow some guidelines. What else did you ask? The
library and the cafeteria.
All right, let me tackle the dining hall. So the dining hall, which is located in Sheehan, is going to be available to all residential students in time blocks. So students will either go with we're calling a cluster or a household, and they will have times when they go with them and eat with them. Students are not forced to sit with their cluster or household. They certainly can do a grab and go. Grab and go is for all students. So certainly you can do a grab and go through Sheehan. But if students are looking to go sit and eat at Sheehan, right now it's just residential students and it's during time blocks. Anywhere else will be a grab and go. And I believe, and Henry, you may know more, but I believe we're still working through the library and figuring that out, is my understanding.
I can answer. I do have an answer
good.
for that
Okay.
at this point. Yeah. So I'll pass on some new information for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just was able to talk to our library director yesterday. The plan at this point is to open the library for in-person activities from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Usually the hours are a lot longer, but because of the cleaning issues and the staffing issues and so forth, we want to be very careful. Those could expand if the demand is there, the need is there. The library has been very quick to accommodate student expressions of wishes for different hours, staying open later, things like that. However, I did notice someone was asking about space to do like online courses and work and so forth. There will be many designated places on campus for students to go where they can use their laptops. We also have computer labs with computers available to them. Again, all socially distanced, all safe, all that kind of thing, as much as we can be. But at all times, so if students have, an in-person class, then an online class and an in-person class, they'll have a place they can go to do that in-person class if it's in real time. And they'll be all over campus in each of the buildings and so on. And we'll have a sort of a map and a guide, so students will know where to go for that.
Thanks, Hank.
Oh, I did want to add, so the library's physical hours are 8 to 4. The library, to the extent, probably, I don't know if many of you are familiar with university libraries. University libraries now have a lot of online resources. 90% of what I do with the library, and I do it a lot, is online. Reading online work, dealing with students, a lot of online, material, which is really nice because we're able to not have them buy textbooks because we have a lot of resources that are free to them through the library, and especially with distance learning, very easy to access from off campus. So the library is operating, in a sense, 24/7, and a lot of resources are available, and there'll be protocols if a student needs a physical book that isn't available electronically, there'll be a protocol for getting that. There's all sorts of stuff set up. But my understanding is things like reserve readings that a particular class might have they were in the spring and they should go through the same process, will be available online, even though historically the student would have to go to the library physically and check out the material for a couple hours. Now they'll be available to them online. So yeah, they'll have great library resource access all the time.
Thanks, Hank. Dawn, what is the plan for resident tuition as it pertains to reimbursement if students are told they can no longer stay at some point during the school year?
Sure. So I just want to say this would be housing costs, and we would tuition is a little bit different. So we would do like we did in the spring when we had to pivot. We would prorate. So you would be charged for just the time you're there, and yes, we would reimburse. We would absolutely want to make sure that we're doing that appropriately, and we would just have to look at the date that is determined that we would have everyone move out.
Dawn, another one for you. When will the guidelines specific to returning to campus during COVID-19 be addressed?
I think I need more. We've been putting guidelines out there all on our website. We have a bunch of videos we've been posting. So I would say what you really want to do is sit with your student and go through the website, and you'd have to read through, but everything's on there. There's frequently asked questions. There's an actual safe return right on our Worcester State homepage. It's a lot of information, but I find it incredibly helpful, and it covers everything from residence life to being in the classroom to just being on campus. But please know there are signs everywhere on campus. There are postings and stickers on the floor, and And so they're not, I really hope no one's showing up blindly, but if they are, you can't miss what you need to do once you're on campus. But for residential students, the Woo Weekly goes out and it's loaded with information in regards to preparing them for living on campus. And then I know Christy's office has been sending information out from your newsletter on just how to be prepared and what to do. But everything's on there. It really is wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands. And then once you go to class, you'll have your schedule. Students will know where to go, and they'll see that there's limits to how many can be in the classroom. There'll only be so many desks allowed. So we've been spending a lot of time this summer getting ready for that. But if there's any specific questions and anyone feels they're not in the loop or in the dark, please feel free to email myself or Henry or anyone on this chat, and we will get you all those answers.
The website for the Safe Return is in the chat. So the university has a dedicated site to it, and that website is in the chat now. So Don talked a little bit about it, and now Henry, on the academic side of the house, what happens if and when school is shut down and we have to go remote?
Excellent question. In the spring, we essentially converted all our classes because everything had to go to distance learning. The campus was not shut down per se. Things were still functioning, but we didn't ask students to come to class anymore. We arranged for distance learning. And we essentially extended spring break by a week, gave faculty members that 2-week period to retool their classes, did a ton of support for faculty members and students in that period in terms of getting everyone ready. And then people came back to a distance learning process that seemed to work reasonably well, given that no one at the beginning of the semester had planned for this. What's different for the fall is we have now been planning for months for every possibility for this fall. I mean, short of a major earthquake, we're ready for whatever is going to come, whatever schedule shifts. They're like, at one point we had 12 different scenarios going for ways we were going to approach classes. Right now we're starting off with this mix of in-person and online experiences. And when I say online, just be very clear, a lot of those online experiences are synchronous, so they are face-to-face with a professor, with classmates. It's just on a computer, just like what we're doing here. So there'll be interaction, but just not direct in the same room. So we've got that split to start off the semester. Faculty members are well aware of what happened in the spring and well prepared now for any changes that would need to happen. In fact, we've been setting up different things to do. We've been using this word pivot. If we have to pivot in the middle of the semester, what do we do? How do we do it? Everything is set up. One, probably the worst case scenario is at some point we have to go back to distance learning only. And we will do that if we have to. Again, safety first. We will do whatever is necessary to ensure the safety of our students and everybody else involved on campus. So what faculty are doing now, in essence, they're developing the course, sort of the way they're planning to teach it, and then they're also developing it if at this point or that point they need to go online only. So they'll be prepared. What that is translating into is a lot of faculty members are loading some of the stuff towards the beginning of the semester, so that if we get to a point mid or later in the semester that they need to go online, everything is set. And that includes actually lab courses are sort of setting up. So if they need to do virtual labs, eventually they can do that. They're doing the things the students need. And I know there was a question about, some schools are starting their semester early, in say mid-August and then ending after Thanksgiving. We're not planning to do that. However, if we need to go online at any point because of safety, we will do that. But we are prepared to do that. The courses are designed so that everything will be set, and students will be informed, hey, these are the different ways things could happen. Just be aware. And let's, all keep our fingers crossed that we're getting a handle on COVID and moving forward.
All right, so those were all of the pre-submitted questions, and I know we have a bunch of questions in the chat, so I'm gonna get into those. Some of them which have been answered by both Don and Henry over here, such as the library hours from Ralph. Another question was, when can my student who is a commuter pick up his student ID?
That is a good question. It might be one I have to get back to you on. I think students are being contacted directly about that. So I may not even know the answer to that, but I don't know if anyone else.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Don, if I can jump in, that's all going to be handled. Students are getting a lot of communications
Sure.
about that and other things. So they will definitely know what they need to do. I don't know whether they have to physically come in to do the photo and the process, or they can upload a photo. Christy, do you happen to know?
I think they're looking at a process to upload a photo. Josh and I had talked to the One Card office last week, a couple weeks ago. They are looking at that process.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing for commuters is if they do have to pick them up when they get to school, that's fine. They don't need them right when they get here, versus a resident student would get them probably throughout the month of August, I think they're looking at doing, or right when they move in. So we will, Henry's right, we will communicate the actual process. They're still trying to figure that out. They are looking to try to do the uploaded photo, which would save some time and lines. Usually we hand them out at orientation when we person orientation. Obviously that was not able to happen this year. So have your student keep an eye out for that information.
One of the biggest takeaways from, I think, this that you can relay to your student is a lot of information they're going to get is via their Worcester State University email. Mm-hmm. So it is very important that they are checking their Worcester State University email consistently from now until the time school starts. Another question was, when can my student, again, it was a commuter, pick up his parking decal? While we were on here, we did reach out to University Police and we did get it back that this year commuters will not need parking passes for this year only. Because of the situation, we're forgoing the commuter parking passes. They are still allowed to park anywhere that isn't faculty, staff, or reserved. So your commuter student will not need to have a parking decal this year.
We will send out a commuter guide to commuters that list all of the parking areas, so they will be familiar with that. So again, probably I think toward the end of August, I think it's after orientation, we'll be sending it out to students too.
Residential students will need to apply to get a parking decal.
Dawn, since you said that, there was a follow-up. Can resident students have a vehicle on campus? And obviously resident student being a first year.
They should apply for it. I think we're looking at that now. But certainly, I mean, I'm going to guess there's going to be quite a bit of space, and I know they're trying to figure that out. But if you don't mind, Josh, at some point, can you look up the parking site? There's where you can apply.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you.
Hank, this question is for you. When will math placement tests be given?
So again, that's one of those things where students actually are being contacted by the Academic Success Center, which is handling all the first year schedules. The way we're doing it, the tests are being done online over the summer. So students actually do not need to come in to do them. They can do them from their home, from your home or wherever they are. Right now, the priority is for students who are in programs where there are math requirements, basically their first semester. So they need to get tested to make sure they get into the appropriate math course. And then as we go forward, students will be able to test who may not have the immediate need for a placement just for the fall. And honestly, once we get the fall set up and the students who absolutely need to have the tests are given on an ongoing basis. I know right now we're planning to keep the online test process going, but we will also, eventually get back to in-person testing, which is even more, it's very convenient because then the student just basically has to show up. But we'll keep on that, and students will have opportunities to take placement tests and take them more than once if they need to, anything like that. So so just have them keep a check. And if an individual student thinks they're not getting the test that they needed, or they haven't been able to take what they thought they needed to, just have them contact the person who's working with them at the Academic Success Center, and that person will make sure, you know, that they get the placement testing they need.
This next question, Ralph, if you could confirm, when you talk about is WSU testing commuters, do you mean COVID testing, I'm assuming, sir? If that's the case, is WSU testing commuter students for COVID?
Not at the time, not currently. I can't say that won't change. But right now, we're doing residential students, and the reason for that is clearly they're in much more close contact with one another, where when they go to classes, they are going to be practicing social distancing, wearing their masks. There will be hand sanitizer. We will encourage them to hand wash, and just kind of follow that social contract to make sure they're doing their part. Should we learn that somebody in a classroom comes down with COVID, we will have to know what's going to happen is they're going to not be able to use that classroom and move to another classroom until that classroom gets disinfected. So there's a lot of steps in place to manage that right now for all commuters.
So an asked and answered question, if people missed in the chat, are masks being provided, cloth, reusable ones, or disposable? Each student will be given 2 reusable masks. The question from Ralph and Jerry Ann about the library hours, Hank touched upon, early class, and the next one, there will be multiple locations that students can go in between classes to do work on online, or just to hang out in between.
And Josh, someone asked if there was a map available for that. We will have all the areas similar to parking. We'll have a notice go to students with where they can go, and make sure they're well aware. There'll also be signs up, and they're all over the place, so they'll get to know those spots pretty well.
We are working too with Tammy Tebow and Academic Success Center to come up with that list, hopefully by our last week of online orientation for first-year students, in which our orientation leaders would share that information. So hopefully we can put together a full list for them. That would be good.
Just so you know too, with the masks, all residential students, when they move in, will find them in their rooms. So their masks will be waiting for them. And for commuter students, I believe, and again, we're working through it, we might be mailing them. Yeah. We're mailing them out. Yeah, and then there'll be extras all across campus. So thank you.
Hank, will in-person only classes be broadcasted live or available online for students who might need to quarantine?
Excellent question. And there's actually, this is like a 2-hour talk about all the different scenarios and so forth. The bottom line is, if a student needs to quarantine, they should contact our health services administrator, and that person will then, be able to relay that information. Often it ends up with me, and I contact professors to let professors know what's going on. Anytime there's something like that, the student will have the opportunity to continue to participate and make up work and so forth. There are also cases where there would be specific accommodations that students would need for distance learning. And the way that's being handled right now is we're trying to rework schedules so that the students will have the appropriate modality for themselves, even through the whole semester. Beyond that, every classroom is being outfitted with what are called hover cams, or actually there are these whole little Star Trek like podiums with a whole bunch of cool things on them that include a camera, and that allows for live streaming of classes that the professor is teaching, recording them and so forth. How professors will actually use that will depend on their particular courses and how they're setting things up with students. But the capability is there. I know I am actually teaching a course this fall, and I will be live streaming everything that happens in class. And I've already told students if they don't feel comfortable coming, that's completely fine. Just let me know what's going on, and then they can participate through this process. And the nice thing about that is it's not just a one-way video, but students will actually be able to participate in the class from a distance, which I think is very similar to what you're doing now. So it's not just watching or recording. I will also, and I can only speak for myself, I'll record what happens in class as well for students to be able to observe later, particularly if someone gets sick and they're out for a week or something, they'll be able to come back and catch up. But yeah, I know just talking to a lot of faculty, they're super concerned about this. A lot of faculty are sort of ready to do whatever it takes to make sure students are okay. That's what we saw in the spring. I know we'll see it in the fall as well. So the one thing, actually, as an aside, if your student has any needs, please tell them to not be shy. Sometimes students are hesitant to ask for a particular support, a particular kind of thing that they need. And I can't guarantee every professor, will have a great response, but I think the vast majority will do whatever they can to help out your student. And I think I've just seen students who are too humble or too worried about, hey, I just got to do this myself, and don't take advantage of all the supports that are there. So just make sure they're not shy. Just ask for what they need. We have offices all across campus they can ask. And we're really geared to support them, especially with COVID, but even if COVID weren't here, just in general, we really want to make sure students have the supports, the tools, everything they need to do well, the way that we know that they can.
The next question is, can students wait to purchase their books until they meet their professor at the first online or in-person class in case the professor isn't going to require the text but simply recommend? Or are students expected to have all text prior to the first class?
I'm going to tackle that one and say that is a really difficult question, which will vary by class. I know, again, I taught for years at Worcester State. I got into the habit of using other kinds of readings for the first maybe 2 to 3 weeks of class. So I would use online material and so forth just to give students time to get the books, because some of them would, order online. There were always these kinds of complexities. And I know some faculty members do that. We've actually moved a lot on campus to what are called open educational resources, as well as I mentioned before, using our online resources through the library, which Worcester State pays for, but your student doesn't pay for. So a lot of courses end up using that. A lot of people are teaching textbookless now in different ways, so that may not be an issue. Beyond that, if a textbook is required, it will say required on the bookstore list, which you can look up online. And Josh, I don't know if I know it's on our homepage, the bookstore, but if you have a quick thing, it's under student life. And students can search for each class what books there are. And if it's recommended, it'll say recommended. I would say on our campus, faculty use very few recommended books at this point. That's not something we do so much of. However, if a faculty member mislabels or something like that, just have your student ask that first day. I know Dawn, Student Affairs handles the bookstore, but there is a window for students to purchase texts and then return them if they're not going to use them for full refund. So Dawn, I don't know if you could say something about that.
Sure. And we're going to be at the bookstore. They're going to be as flexible as they can. I'm going to tackle this from a different end, though, just so you're aware, because typically what would happen is students would order their books and then go into the bookstore and get them and make sure they're there. But with all the online orders, they're taking a while. So I would really encourage your student to either order them to get them delivered to your home, or they can be delivered to the bookstore for pickup. But then, and we are opening, the bookstore's open, they're practicing, the social distancing in the bookstore. But again, we're trying to limit the crowds that go into the bookstore and the traffic that goes in there. So I agree with Henry in regards to recommended versus required. I would focus on the required and have your student get on top of that so that they're not scurrying later to try to get the book. So hopefully that's helpful.
Dawn, this one's for you. We were given what looks like a 1-hour window for moving in on Friday. On the website, it says we have 2 hours. We're hoping for the latter. Can you confirm?
Yes, you have 2 hours. We're just we want you to get in with your student, bring whoever you are, get the room set up. We just want you to move swiftly. But yeah, please do that again, and do what you need to do on campus. Offices they're open on a limited basis, but reach out now if you need to go to any offices. The bookstore's open, if you need to go to the bookstore. But yeah, we didn't want to give the impression you could just hang out in the room all day, because we're trying to get students stuff in and keep this process moving. And so far, I can tell you right now, it's working very well. This was day 2, and families and students are very happy, so it's good. But yes, you have 2 hours.
Sean, the answer about the resident vehicle, a couple posts down from yours, is the Residence Life Woo Weekly, last week's Woo Weekly, that has information on resident parking. So you can take a look at that. Next question, probably for Dawn and Christy. What will campus life look like for first-time residents? Will clubs meet virtually? Will any social activities take place? Will they be online? What is the benefit to living on campus at this point?
Wow, that's a brilliant question. Is it Paige? Paige, that's a brilliant question.
Paula.
Paula, Paige is her daughter.
Sorry. So I'm going to start by saying, for those of us who went to college, we had a very different experience, obviously. So it's hard not to say to the incoming freshmen, we know what you potentially could be missing out on. But I think it's really important for our brand new incoming students to create their own college experience in the midst of this. And we know we want them to have a positive experience. So it's gonna look different than anything any of us have ever experienced. But if you walk into a store or a restaurant right now, it looks very different than we've ever experienced. But we are gonna make it as friendly and as user-friendly and as positive as we possibly can. Please don't think for a second that our hearts don't ache for our students over this. We talk about it all the time, and we're going to make the best of it. And so it's a great question. Why we are going to have some in-person stuff. We just need to do it in smaller groups and do it with social distancing, with masks on. The staff are aware of that and are working on programs and things to make that happen. We are gonna do some things virtually. It just makes sense, so you can include more and be more inclusive to everyone. So we're working that out with constantly in the back of our minds. We want our students to have this positive living, learning experience. It's really important. It will not be the same as ours. For those of us who went to college, it won't be the same. It's just gonna be different. And we want to give it a chance. That's why we're open. We really want to give it our all, that they can have the best experiences possible. Really encouraging the social distancing, wearing the mask. I can tell you, just from the 2-day move-in, students are all in. We have upperclassmen who came back to help their siblings and their cousins move in, and everyone's practicing all the precautions and really following it to the letter of the law. I've been incredibly impressed by it. So I'm feeling very hopeful after these 2 days, I have to be honest. And again, we're being cautious, and we're gonna have to be. We're just gonna have to be cautious with all that's happening. So I hope that answers your question. And you said, why live on campus? Because we're gonna do the best that we can with this. Why live in the halls? Well, they're still going to meet each other. They're still going to make friends. They're still, and I wonder, for some, it's going to be even easier because you're going to be in clusters and households. So you're going to be with people, the same people, and never kind of left out, never left alone, never, unless you need that time alone, then go get your grab and go, and you can find your spot, because that's important too. But we're really doing all that we can to make this as pleasant and as experience as we can. I don't know, Christy, if you, or anyone, if you have anything more to add.
I can talk about clubs real quickly, because part of the question was about, will clubs be meeting virtually and in events and things. So we have close to 40 student organizations on campus currently. And we usually have new ones start every fall semester. So what we are looking at is to encourage our student organizations to meet virtually, to be, as Dawn said, more inclusive. But we are working with them to provide some smaller in-person events and encourage them with a lot of support and resources to come up with virtual programming as well. We did about 6 weeks, quick turnaround, pivot, as you say, of programming in March, probably beginning of April to right at the beginning of May last year. And I will say, a lot of the student groups were quick to get out there and put things online. Our office also does a lot of programming, and so didn't like Residence Life. So we are prepared, from just like the faculty had that 6 weeks in the springtime to kind of learn how to do things more virtually. Our organizations as well as our office have done the same. We will also provide our typical welcome week. It won't be as typical, but we will provide welcome week for geared toward first year students, but open to everybody. It would begin the first day of school and run the week and a half, with some in-person events as well as some virtual events, contests, anything that they win prizes they love. Might be a little sick of Zoom maybe from high school, but that is a great way to still meet people and partake in some of the events that we have. So that will be something they can look forward to. And that first full week of school, we will be having a student involvement week, like a club. We usually do a big club kickoff with all the clubs having tables, and we're going to do a mixture of tabling for clubs as well as virtual tables or meetings, if you will. So there will still be opportunities. They may just have to try a little harder, as I had mentioned. And remember, all of these programs are not just for resident students too. Commuters are more than welcome to attend as well as join online as well. So we're working hard. This last month is going to be filling the calendar, especially looking at September, as that's a super important month to really get students engaged on campus. So that's our focus. Now that orientation we're into it, we're moving to really focusing on the programming. So I promise you there will still be things to do, as well as leadership programming as well.
Hank, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, there are other connections that may not be just specifically to resident students, but one of the real values at Worcester State is the sense of belonging to a community that really, really is a community. And I think that's, I can say Dawn is newer at Worcester State, but I know Christy, Josh, and I have been at Worcester State. They've been there since they were little children, pretty much, but a long time. We've been here for a long time, and we're here because we love the spirit of the place. We love the community. I really genuinely like these folks I work with. I mean, we have great meetings. We feel like we're doing good work for the students. And students, there are just so many students who really do feel that way about the campus, and that's really important. And that, we know it's a little bit harder with the virtual world. But we also know, and we've been seeing this, that students, this generation of students coming in, they're used to being connected with people through electronic means in ways that I certainly never was. And so our job is just to make sure there are plenty of opportunities for that will also build the basis. So once COVID is over, and remember, it's going to end at some point. I mean, it will end. We just don't know when. That they're going to have these great bonds with folks through all these different experiences, great stories to tell about the COVID days, and be able to move in with a real sense of, the COVID days, with a real sense of community as they go through their further years at Worcester State. So, so we really want every student to feel they have a personal connection to someone. I mean, right up to the president. President has connections with students all the time, knows students, faculty members, staff, people really connect, and then student to student, people really develop good relationships. So we're excited to keep working on that and making sure that happens.
Hank, this question is for you. On the student schedule, the classes are listed as hybrid and some are listed as blended. What is the difference between the two?
None should be listed as hybrid. They're actually the same thing, but we decided this year, this spring, actually about 2 months ago, to start just using the word blended to avoid confusion. Somehow that hybrid code is still showing up. It's supposed to be out of the courses. They both mean the same thing, that some of the class will be in person and some of it will be at a distance. Now, when I say at a distance, probably the biggest thing to keep in mind is even fully online courses typically will have significant so-called synchronous sections. Synchronous means people will work together at the same time through Zoom, through Blackboard Collaborate in different ways. And that we think is really important, right? So the idea is not to have this like an old correspondence school where you're not really interacting with people, but even at a distance, you're gonna keep interacting with people a lot, in some cases more. And I would add that one of the benefits of COVID-19 is that, faculty and students have learned so much about how to use technology for class meetings and so forth, that one of the things I think is going to be really valuable is increased flexibility around things like group projects where people will be able to meet virtually even when they have difficult schedules and so forth. There's going to be a lot more that your students will be able to do as they go through their time at Worcester State, because we're just getting so good at using the technology that's available and making sure we have some great stuff to do that with.
So some of the words, the synchronous, asynchronous, blended, in-person, online that Hank just talked about, there is a PDF file in the chat that our Academic Success Center did. So you can download that and take a look, and it's very informative about the differences between the various models on campus. Another question, Dawn, maybe you can talk about this. Will the clusters or households you described be by floor, and will they be organized once students move in?
Sure. They're being organized now. So a household is actually depends on where you live. So students who live in an apartment, everyone they live in the apartment with is a household. Those who live in a suite, everyone they live in the suite with is a household. And then for those who live in Dowden, which is our first year traditional residence hall, those are there's 3 clusters per floor, per wing. And so they already know which rooms are considered a cluster. So we've already established that.
Thank you. That is all of the questions that we have in the chat. If anyone has any final ones, please put them in there. And I know Chrissy has a couple of other things to go over.
Sure. Some good questions today, I have to say. These were really, really good. So
Excellent question.
a couple of things. First off, next week, and Dawn might want to talk a little bit about this, but next week we'll be having an all parent, so parents from all grade levels, chat for a safe return to campus next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Dawn had talked to me earlier today and said they are sending out information to all families. So if you have still questions after this or would like to also listen to another chat, that is going to be offered next week, but that will be all even upperclassmen families. So just so you're aware, this is more obviously specifically for first year families. So that will be next week.
I'll add to
go ahead. Yes, please.
That there's going to be different constituents across campus on that. I don't know how many, it may not be that many, but in case you're still feeling a little bit of angst in regards to the upcoming year, feel free to join that. Again, August 12th, 6 p.m. Postcards were, is my understanding, they were mailed out. You may not have gotten them yet, but those are coming. So if you just want to mark your calendar, and then for some wild reason, if you don't get the postcard, you certainly can call, email any one of us, and we'll make sure that we connect you and get you that Zoom link.
What I can do too is send out the Zoom link to all email addresses that have registered for our Zooms over the last few months. So I'll be happy to do that as well. So keep an eye on your email. We also have coming up this Thursday. So speaking of angst, if you have a little angst and you're stressed out maybe, we are actually doing a transition to college chat with counseling services and student accessibility services. We did a version of this with counseling services back in May and June, but now we're all in a different place, and we have more information going into the fall. So they are going to be available. That's this Thursday at 6 p.m. If you'd like to register, you can hop back on the orientation website at worcester.edu/orientation and sign up for that. I know many of you have already done that. So that'll be coming up as well. So those are like the last two kind of chats that we'll be providing. But again, if there's any questions at all, orientation at worcester.edu. I've been fielding a lot of questions from your students about online orientation, and we've been getting calls in our office to 508-929-8615 for the orientation line if you do have any questions. We are in the midst of our online orientation program. Hopefully all of your students are part of it. This is our second week right now. Please encourage them, again, what Josh said, to check their email because they say, I didn't get the Zoom link for orientation. You did. You just didn't check your email. So we found that a lot of them just aren't used to, and we get it, just used to checking their Worcester email. So if you could just, again, remind them, that would be awesome. But they seem to be enjoying the program. I know online isn't as fun as in person, but our orientation leaders that Josh and I work with are doing a really good job making those connections. And that's just another way for us to make the connections for student to student as we're moving into the fall. So encourage them to still show up. There's 3 sessions left this week, so into the next couple of weeks. So please have them follow up. If anybody, any student didn't register, can email orientation@worcester.edu and we'll place them in a group for the next few weeks. Okay. You know, as Hank and Donna have already kind of talked about, we were thrown for a loop back in March. All kind of were sent home students, but I do agree. It's been along several months, but I think we finally are at a good place now, in my opinion, at the university where we're able to have this Zoom chat and answer these questions for you. Mm-hmm. There is still a lot that we're working out, but I think it's great that we have families that are interested in learning about what we're doing, taking a look at that website that Josh put up for a safe return. It was, a challenge, and we've all been working outside of the box for many of the different things. Online orientation isn't something I've ever done. I think it's something to be said that we're getting to a really good place, and your students will be happy that they did decide to choose us for the fall. It's just a learning process. So hopefully all of this goes back to normal sooner than later. I don't know when, but that's something that I think we can all look forward to.
Can I add just one quick, I just want to add one quick little plug. September 1st at 3 p.m., we're doing a virtual academic convocation. What that means is convocation is a fancy word for welcoming the new students to campus to become part of our academic community. And we do this every fall. It's usually an in-person ceremony. The students get to process in. It's like the preview of graduation kind of thing, but much shorter and fewer speeches. We're going to do it virtually this year. It'll be actually short, probably about 15 minutes. But it's a nice little welcoming moment, sort of rite of passage for when your student will become, a part of Worcester State, a part of the academic community. And it's the day before classes start. Again, they'll get information on this, but it's on September 1st at 3 p.m. It will be recorded. There'll be a recording that they can watch later. But if they want to, tune in at that time, everything will be on our website, announcement and everything. It's might be a nice little transition point, especially after what they've been through for the last 6 months in their educations, how up in the air things have been.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to thank Dawn and Henry for coming on here and answering all of your questions. Josh is the question moderator I know, so I appreciate his help as well. And I appreciate all of you taking a little over an hour to learn more about our plans for the fall. So if anybody has questions, again, feel free to reach out to orientation office and we're happy to answer them for you. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you all and your students very soon. So thanks for joining us. Have a good night.